Larry, we are reconvening the Citizens Grand Jury today. Morning on the West Coast, afternoon on the East Coast. How are you feeling today, Larry?
I'm ready for the fight, Jason. You know, it's you can feel happy. The sun is shining all over this country. People have an appearance of being happy, but there's an underlying cancer that's growing in the country. And the cancer is primarily furthered by my once proud alma mater, the Department of Justice, which has become more than the Department of Injustice that I wrote about in Whores, my second book, Why and How They Came to Fight the Establishment, and more than I wrote about in It Takes a Revolution, Forget the Scandal Industry, which is currently being updated because the horror story today is much worse than it was last October 27th when the initial volume came out. I want people to read the first one and then compare it to the second one, which will be coming out early next year. But right now, we're having to deal with tyranny in this country. The tyranny is being furthered by our so-called law enforcement establishment, which is no law enforcement establishment at all. The Justice Department and its FBI have been turned into the private Gestapo of Comrade Biden and Comrade Harris and their radical leftists, radical blacks, radical Muslims, radicals of the Marxian Jewish left, radical feminists, radical gays, lesbians, transgenders, and transsexuals, and radical atheists. Most people in these groups, as I've said, are decent people. We may not agree with their lifestyle, but they have a right to do as they please, but do not push it on us. We do not consider your behavior to be normal or to be helpful in furthering the godly edicts in our 10 Commandments and other various writings and ways of life. We are now experiencing a war by the Justice Department and its FBI and the government, now controlled by the left, against our children. I'm going to play a little clip of a YouTube that I did yesterday initially, and then we're going to get into what Merrick Garland, formerly a judge on the U.S. Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia Circuit, the most dishonest appellate court in the country. I have lawsuits pending against every single judge. We won't get into it in this show. And its lower courts, political hacks of the highest magnitude, people that got their jobs based on political campaign contributions and other forms of grease, otherwise known as bribery, however legalized by our corrupt legal system. We have to deal with this. We, the American people, need to use citizens' grand juries to hold Merrick Garland and Christopher Wray accountable for using their agency, violating their oath of office, probably calling as we speak, using their oath of office to terrorize people from dissent. The people on January 6th, most of them were overwhelmingly peaceful. As I've said many, many times, there were some bad people on both sides, but they had reached a point where they said, we can't take it anymore. And they didn't do what the French did on July 14, 1789. They were by and large not violent. In fact, it was some of the government people that were violent against them, but of course that's been covered up. And they rose because they saw the rank corruption in government over and over and over again over the last decades, as I write about, and It Takes a Revolution. You know, I'm not Mark Levin. I don't need to tell people about American Marxism. We knew that already existed. You can take, 300 and some pages of his book, basically, and forget about reading it. What I was interested in when I bought it was, what is the solution? His solution was, we protest and we boycott. Well, that's not enough. Okay, we have to now wage a new revolution, a counter-revolution. We're using citizens' grand juries to enforce the Constitution and the rule of law. We will indict, we will try, we will convict, we will sentence, and we will ask the police and the military to carry out the sentences. And they've had it. They've been maligned, they've been assaulted, they've been battered, they've been killed, they've been defunded, they've been disrespected, particularly the military with regard to Afghanistan. Our brave servicemen and women gave their lives for, excuse the French, the bullshit that our politicians put forth. and they were betrayed recently. And the Republican Party is part of that, because the Republican Party got national security briefings in the days leading up to the surrender to the Taliban, ISIS, and Al-Qaeda in Afghanistan, and leaving all of the Americans there and having 13 killed, notwithstanding the fact that Biden, to look tough, then ordered a drone strike and killed 7 children and 3 others that had nothing to do with terrorism or anything like that. We have had it. And we intend to use peaceful and legal means, in addition to our citizens' grand juries, our Third Continental Congress, which you can also see our sessions on July 5th and 6th. And later, we had a follow-up, and we're having another follow-up. We will declare independence. We will form a new government. We will be peaceful and legal, but we will install a legal system by and for the people that respects the Constitution. And we will come up with a few fine tunings to the Constitution, judges to be elected, not appointed with campaign contributions, otherwise known as bribes and other forms of grease. We will take a number of other actions, and that's what I'm writing about in this new book that I'm coming out with, which is a continuation of the old book. So stay tuned. I want to play the YouTube that I did yesterday, and then we're going to show what's been going on this morning. The same old, excuse the French, bullshit from Congress. Dog and pony shows. You've got members of the Marxian Jewish left. I'm a Jewish Christian myself. I'm a Messianic Jew, so nobody can accuse me of being anti-Semitic. I'm a Zionist. I support Israel. If you don't like it, you can take it where the sun don't shine. This is where our heritage comes from. This is where our legal system comes from, like it or not. Comes from the 10 Commandments, comes from the Talmud, comes from the Old Testament, comes from the New Testament. Jesus was a rabbi, by the way. And it comes from our heart, and it comes from God. And that is why we, the American people, must invoke the divine providence. We must not be afraid. We must not be threatened into submission, as the so-called Justice Department is doing today with its FBI. We have to take risks peacefully and legally, but we have our Second Amendment rights, and we have the right to commission militias. That's in the Second Amendment if the government decides to be violent with us. We will not take it anymore. We will be unafraid. If you care about your kids and grandkids and future generations, as Washington, Jefferson, and Franklin did, then you, if you are a senior, will get out of retirement, get your big rear end off the couch, stop watching Sean Hannity, which is more bullshit every day, get up and do your job to save this country for your children. And also, if you're young or middle-aged, you will also take action, because you're going to have nothing. You're already 90% gone, 90% gone, with violent crime also running rampant. And that's another plan of the left that I write about in this new edition of my book. They want there to be violent crime. They want to be racial division. They want there to be one person, one American pitted against another, because that allows the left to take total control. And all the while, the Republicans participate in these phony hearings, words, not actions. They raise money. How many emails are you getting every day from the Republican Party and people in and around President Trump? I'm sure he probably doesn't even know the full extent of what's going on. His fundraisers are making money, and they're telling people that he's going to run. He's not going to run again. He may want to run again, but the first time he says that he's going to run again, these rabid leftist prosecutors in New York City will indict him, Don Jr., Eric, and others in the family, and he'll spend the next few years trying to keep himself out of prison in front of a New York jury, which would be a hanging jury, as well as a District of Columbia jury. So it's time for the American people to understand the facts of life, to wake up, to stop being complacent, to think this is going to go away, to think that you can go off and play golf and play tennis and do whatever you want, and nothing's going to happen to you and your kids, but it is. So these citizens' grand juries are part of our plan for a counter-revolution, peaceful and legal. Jason, let's play my YouTube video of yesterday. Then we're going to get into the opening statement of Congressman Jim Jordan and then Louis Gohmert, both Republicans, talk a good game, but in the end do nothing. And then we're going to listen to Merrick Garland, this frankly corrupt, vile hack that is now head of the Justice Department, who, God forbid, had been nominated by Obama to be a justice on the Supreme Court. Thank God he's not there, but then again, it makes little difference because no one else on the Supreme Court seems to care much about the Constitution anyway. So let's play this.
Absolutely. Just briefly before we play the clip, Larry, you brought up the military, and in perhaps one of the most egregious affronts to anyone who has served the country, they're now threatening members of the Navy, including elite forces like the Navy SEALs, with having to return money from bonuses and even pay for training they've already received. I mean, this is one of the most disingenuous actions I've ever heard of coming from anywhere. And I also want to let our viewers know that we're going to be watching your podcast from yesterday, which they can watch every day on Freedom Watch TV. People can get there just by going to YouTube and searching for Freedom Watch. I want to thank the 58,000 subscribers who are there and those who are watching our simulcast right now. People can watch and participate in the chat. Let's take a look at the video from yesterday, shall we, Larry?
My name's Larry Klayman, as you know. I'm here to talk to you about a very serious matter. The Democratic Party, which has literally become inhabited by the devil, and its titular head, of course, we're not sure exactly what head is screwed on our alleged president, Joe Biden, has become the enemy of children in a number of respects. Just this morning, it was announced that Biden is in effect ordering the pharmaceutical companies to dilute the COVID-19 vaccine so it can be administered to children over the age of 5. We don't know the short, medium, and long-term effects. Many people have died. In fact, just in the last few days, former Secretary of State Colin Powell, black, and also someone who allegedly died of COVID-19, succumbed to COVID-19. In fact, these vaccines appear to be essentially worthless. Many people who have gotten the vaccines have now gotten COVID-19. So you got to ask yourself this question. Why would anyone, an adult, much less a child, take this vaccine when, frankly, it appears not even to work to any great extent? And then you're going to have to take it over and over again, keep pumping that stuff into your system, because even Pfizer has admitted it only lasts 8 months. And if Pfizer says it's working only for 8 months, then in fact it's probably a lot less. Secondly, the Democratic Party, with no Republican opposition really to speak of, is now propagating in schools that white people are racists from birth, critical race theory. Our kids are being indoctrinated and being told that they're racist, that they should be ashamed of who they are. Everybody's equal in this country, black, white, yellow, green, or blue. This is not something that should be pushed upon children. Then, a homosexual, lesbian, gay, transgender agenda is also being pushed in schools. Kids are being told that this is normal. Well, you know what? These people deserve to live in peace. They deserve their rights. No one wants to harm them. If you can be whatever you want to be, but don't push it on people and don't indoctrinate children. That's what the Democrats are wanting to do, and this is what they're doing. It's to the point where if your child comes home from school and he says, I want to be a transgender, as I heard on the NPR just a few weeks ago, you can take him to a surgeon and Obamacare will pay for the operation. That's where we are. Next, killing hundreds of millions of unborn children. That's murder. The Democrats stand for that. In fact, the current governor of Virginia says it's even okay that if you try to give someone an abortion and the child accidentally is born, you can kill him right after birth. These people should be put away and thrown in the slammer. This is the state of the nation today. And then, of course, we have violent crime, defunding the police. That's affecting the children in the schools and every place else. And this is why the Republican Party, as corrupt as it is, needs to be left in the ash heap of history as well. How many emails do you get every day asking for more money? They couldn't reform Obamacare when they controlled government. They couldn't balance the budget when they controlled government. They didn't give the clarion call to the American people when their leaders got national security briefings and they knew what was going to happen in Afghanistan under Joe Biden. They were happy to have it happen. You see them on TV. Look at Jason Chaffetz on Fox News smiling, and the rest of them, a smirk by Senator Tom Cotton over what happened in Afghanistan, as if they really care. Well, they care because they think that's going to give them control of the House of Representatives, Senate, and the presidency. I got news for them. They couldn't win dog catcher. And that is why we need to declare independence again, to form a new government, to form new political parties. I intend to do that separately from Freedom Watch, the New American Independence Party. We should have more, not less. We don't want a monopoly. I'm an old antitrust lawyer that helped break up AT&T. Hopefully not that old. But we need to rise up. The American people don't need to keep taking it from these despots that control us, including the federal judges who got their job through political campaign contributions and other forms of so-called legalized bribery, who rubber stamp what the people that got them on the bench want. We need a new legal system. We need judges elected, not appointed. We need to remove immunity from government officials. We need new political parties. We need a new capital. Take it out of Washington. Frankly, it's in a swamp. It has a putrid odor to it. I know. I spent almost 25 years there. Let's take it somewhere else and start anew. We will not be aggressive. We will not be physical. We will not be violent. We will do what we think is right. We will do what we think is the appropriate thing to do in the name of the Lord and his Son. So rise up, fellow Americans. When the Democrats, literally inhabited by the devil, and the Republicans, which have become a corrupt racketeering enterprise to raise money and to be reelected, are in control of your lives, and in particular your children's lives, it's time to move on. That's my message. I'll be back tomorrow with another YouTube podcast. Until then, thank you for listening to me.
Very well said, Larry.
Well, thank you. Now I want to play the introduction of Representative Jim Jordan, former wrestling coach from Ohio State, wants to look like he's tough all the time, rolled up sleeves, no jacket, Mr. Big Shot, okay? He says the right things. But
he's a nice
that,
guy.
Yeah, he does nothing. He does nothing. Nice guys actually do something when they stand up allegedly for the American people. Like I said, you don't have to go through the system. He can be filing lawsuits himself as a congressman. He can be taking other kinds of actions. He can be joining Freedom Watch and others. Frankly, I'm tired of hearing it, but I want you to hear what he said, because actually the substance of it is correct. And I want you to see the attitude and the approach of Gerald Nadler, who is more than an embarrassment to the Jewish people, because he's not Jewish at all. And I talk about this because, you know, the most courageous people in this country are conservative blacks. They have stood up. They were at our Third Continental Congress. You have others out there like Candace Owens and Dimitri Penny, you know, my client, and others, cop from Dallas, who brought cases against Farrakhan and Sharpton and the others after the Dallas massacre, is that we need to call out people in our own ranks. These people, frankly, are traitors. That's what they are. And we don't wish them any harm, but we need to move on. And we have to stop keep taking the bait that they spew forth, that they're doing something when they're not, because as they're doing it, the ship of state, like the Titanic, is hitting the bottom of the sea. We don't have time for talk. Now is the time to put talk into action. All right, let's roll the video of Jim Jordan, Mr. Big Shot wrestling coach from Ohio State.
We've sent, Republicans on this committee have sent the Attorney General 13 letters in the last 6 months. It takes weeks and months to get a response. 8 of the letters, we've got nothing. They just gave us the finger, said, we're not going to get back to you. And all our letters were actually sent to the Attorney General. Here's a letter sent to someone else asking for a specific thing to be done, and in 5 days, the Attorney General does it. Here's what the October 4th memo said. Quote, I'm directing the FBI to convene meetings with local leaders. These meetings will open dedicated lines of communication for threat reporting. Dedicated lines of communication for threat reporting. A snitch line on parents. Started 5 days after a left-wing political organization asked for it. That's not political. I don't know what is. Where's the dedicated lines of communication with local leaders regarding our southern border? Something that, frankly, is a federal matter. Where's the dedicated lines of communication on violent crime in our cities? Violent crime that has went up in every major urban area where Democrats have defunded the police. Nope, can't do that. Can't do that. The Biden Justice Department is going to go after parents who object to some racist, hate America curriculum.
Yeah, Larry, talk about that, the utilization of the FBI to go after these parents who are attending school board meetings and expressing their concern.
Let it play out, Jason, if you could. I want to see the reaction of
Oh, that was the end of it, wasn't it? It ended.
I think we had more.
That was all the New York Post had of it.
All right, well, we'll come back to that. In the meantime, I'll ask my assistant to find that because I had wanted that played. That's very important. You see the reaction of Gerald Nadler. Let's play Louis Gohmert right now.
Sure. Yeah, these were links from a... Louis Gohmert, I don't have in this list. I'm sorry, Larry.
All right, my assistant will send it to you.
Yeah, sorry about that, Larry. There were a couple of other things, though, that I wanted
We
to...
can talk about it in the meantime. He's going to send that to you. And it's important to see the reaction of Gerald Nadler, the head of the Judiciary Committee. And I want you to see what Gohmert had to say. And there's two reasons for this, like I said, because I want the grand jury to see it. Because what they're saying is absolutely right. It's correct. I agree with it. But it's the Republican Party that does nothing about it. It all just becomes a dog and pony show for public consumption, to raise money, to get reelected. And as I said in the opening video, once they're reelected, what do? They've had the opportunity before when they controlled all three branches of government, and they don't do anything.
I think I have it, Larry. As this fight breaks out between Jim Jordan and Jerry Nadler when Democrats block Jordan from showing a video.
Yeah, let's see that. Great.
Okay, here we go.
Mr. Chairman, we have a video we'd like to play.
Mr. Chairman.
We have a video we'd like to play.
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Dean,
I
what
object.
purpose does Ms. Dean seek recognition?
I object. I'm reserving my right to object to the video.
Why would
May I
you-
inquire as to whether the gentleman has followed the Judiciary Committee's AV protocol by providing 48 hours notice to the committee's clerk that he was going to use a video?
We provided notice. Well, first of all, there's no 48-hour rule. It's not in the committee rules. Second, we did let the committee staff, the majority, know that we had a video, and we
Responding
gave the
to
video
the-
to him this morning.
Responding to the gentlelady's request, he did not. He did not supply
Mr.
the
Chairman.
48 hours rule. 48
I
hours,
insist- then I
48
insist-
hours notice required by the rule.
Mr. Chairman,
Then I insist on my objection. Having failed to follow the bipartisan protocol, I insist on my objection.
An objection has been heard. The video will not be shown.
I appeal the ruling of the chair.
The
The
appealing-
ruling has been made, there's been an objection.
There's been no ruling that was made. There's been no ruling
Mr.
that's been
Chairman, I
made.
wish
There's been an objection.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to speak regarding
No, that's out of order. This is not debatable.
Well, what's out of order is there is no rule that requires a 48-hour notice. That's what's out of
There
order.
is such a rule.
There is not in our rules.
Mr. Chairman, what are you afraid of?
There is such a rule. You objected last year. You were told there was such a rule.
Mr. Chairman, what are our colleagues on the other side of the aisle afraid of? Are they afraid of videos of parents?
The gentleman was recognized for his opening statement. Is he finished
the
with his
ruling of the
opening
chair.
statement?
I'm not finished with my opening.
I seek recognition for a
Gentleman
parliamentary
should
inquiry.
proceed with his
Not a
opening
rule.
statement.
It's not a rule. It's what you said. I think the term you used is it's protocol.
The gentlewoman
Rules don't govern
objected.
the conduct of the committee. Rules do. That's not a rule. We had a video. We understood you had a video.
I seek recognition for a parliamentary inquiry.
Gentlewoman objected because you failed to follow the rule. Her objection is sustained.
Mr. Chairman, I seek
Does the gentleman have anything else? Has he
see-
finished?
We had a recognition for a parliamentary inquiry.
We had. Yeah, but I'll yield back in just a second, and particularly if you're going to
The
recognize.
gentleman
Mr.
yields back?
No, I haven't yielded back yet. I said I will in a second. It's a video about parents at school board meetings, moms and dads speaking at school board meetings, and you guys aren't going to let us play it?
It will not be, an objection has been heard that you failed to give the 48 hours required by the rule, and therefore
What
will not be
rule?
heard.
Mr. Chairman, what rule?
You have to cite the
Parliamentary
rule.
inquiry, what rule? Please present the rule.
In the case of audio-visual materials under the leadership of my predecessor, Chairman Goodlatte, a Republican, The committee developed a written protocol for managing the use of audiovisual materials in our hearings.
Written protocol.
This protocol simply requires members to provide 48 hours notice they are going to use audiovisual materials. Until recently, this protocol was not controversial. It was a helpful tool we used to manage hearings and make sure videos played properly. The gentlewoman has objected to the materials because the gentleman did not provide the agreed-upon 48 hours notice. Playing audiovisual materials during a committee hearing is the equivalent of introducing printed materials into the hearing record. In the normal course of business, we do not object to each other's requests, but members have the right to object if they so choose, and an objection has been heard.
Mr. Chairman, did we ever vote on that?
That's a clever written statement, but a
Gentleman was recognized
protocol
for
is not a
opening
rule.
statement.
Mr. Chairman, obviously you're not going to let us play it. Obviously you're going to censor us, which is sort of the conduct of the left today, it seems, and Democrats today, it seems. I'll yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back. A point of order. Gentleman will state his point of order.
The actual written rule, this is not a rule.
That is not a point of order, as I said before. Playing audiovisual materials during a committee hearing is the equivalent of introducing printed materials into the hearing record. In the normal course of business, we do not object to each other's requests, but members have the right to object if they so choose, and an objection has been heard.
Not a rule, sir. I'd ask you to rule on my point of order.
The gentleman has not made a valid point of order. The gentleman.
Move the table. Move the table.
There's nothing to appeal. There's been no ruling.
Unbelievable,
There's been
Larry.
no
That's
ruling.
just obstructionism.
There's just been an objection, and the objection
Well,
has been heard.
This is their Achilles
Really
heel.
unbelievable.
This is their Achilles heel. When you start messing with children, when you start indoctrinating them in critical race theory, which is essentially racism, when you tell them that if you're white, you are by definition a future domestic terrorist, when you start teaching that homosexuality, that being gay, being lesbian, being transgender, being transsexual is normal, that if you want to be that, then go ahead and do it, and we'll take you to a surgeon if you want to be transgender and transsexual, and we'll convert you into something else, to very impressionable children, and that Obamacare will pay for it. You know, this is you're messing with the kids, okay? And, you know, it's on top of what I said, the continuing abortion. You've got a so-called president of the United States who's Catholic, who is a disgrace to the Catholic religion, who's a disgrace to God, who the Catholic bishops, to their credit, one of the few aspects of any religious institution which is standing up to these atheists, socialists, and communists who have taken over this country, when they say, at a minimum, we're not going to give you communion because you believe in killing babies. And then the Pope, the communist Pope, comes in and says, oh, no, you can't do that. That's just political. You know, the whole world has gone crazy, absolutely crazy. And this country, which is the beacon of freedom for the world, in fact, the Vatican wouldn't exist if it wasn't for this country, you know, is being destroyed in the process. And this is where we are. So that's why they don't want the video to be shown, because it hits the children. And when you touch children, you are hitting a nerve with the American people. And that is why now is the time. Now is the time, not just to put forward with these citizens' grand juries, but to declare independence, because in our Declaration of Independence, it says, when the sovereign, when the government no longer represents the people have a right under the laws of nature and nature's God, not the king's laws, not Biden's laws, not Merrick Garland's laws, not the hack FBI director who's just a yes man chameleon, Christopher Wray, to alter or abolish that government and to form a new government by and for the people in pursuit of life, liberty, and happiness with equal rights for everyone. That's in essence what our Declaration of Independence says. So you see in stark relief, you know, what this Marxian member of the Jewish left, Karl Marx, regrettably, was born Jewish. He's not a Jew. These people are not Jews. These people are atheists, and they are extremely destructive of this country. And I'm calling them out as someone who is Jewish and messianic.
Let me share one important thing with you, Larry, because this speaks quite a bit to, you've always told us how the Washington establishment circles the wagons. This is coming from Forbes, a company called Panorama Education, which was co-founded by Merrick Garland's son-in-law, contracted with 23,000 public schools and raised $76 million from investors. This company publishes school textbooks and various support materials for critical race theory. And so, again, we have all these things in place that are intended to cause people to recuse themselves when there's even the appearance of a conflict of interest. And obviously, if a family member as close as his son-in-law is earning millions and millions of dollars from the promotion of critical race theory, and here we see opposition in Congress wanting to show video and other evidence of the parental response to, these are the people whose taxes pay for public school, whose children are being educated in public school, and they object. We're hearing the likes of Terry McAuliffe, who's in a deadlocked race for governor of Virginia, saying that he doesn't believe that parents should have any say in what public schools do as far as teaching children. And here we see Merrick Garland's son-in-law earning money from promoting this critical race theory.
Yeah, and it's in the code of judicial conduct that when a family member is involved, you have to recuse yourself or be disqualified. Now, he's not sitting in the role of a judge right now. He's sitting in the role of the attorney general. So it's even worse because he's enforcing the law here in a very affirmative way. Judges can't, by the way, enforce the law. They have to rely on the executive branch to enforce the law. This guy controls the executive branch of the U.S. Department of Justice, Merrick Garland. He's got a major conflict of interest, and it's one of the bases that we're seeking his indictment. So I'm very glad that you provided that information to the citizens grand jury, and we will follow up on it further.
Yeah, and we don't have an indictment prepared yet today, but we wanted to share these details with everyone because, Larry, we've been doing these citizens grand juries each week, and it's a huge effort. A lot of people are at home watching, wondering what they can do. A lot of people share our concerns about the weaponization of the FBI and the direction that the country is going in. It's important for people to know that it's extremely difficult. It's time-consuming. It utilizes a lot of resources for us to do this. So I want to encourage viewers and people who want to help the citizens grand juries to visit freedomwatchusa.org. People can tap on this donate tab, and your financial contribution is tax deductible. People who contribute more than $50 are going to receive a copy of Larry's book, It Takes a Revolution, Forget the Scandal Industry. I also want to encourage people to support Crowdsource the Truth by visiting subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth or patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. And Larry, do we want to talk about some of the other progress that we're making?
January 6th, right now. You showed it just a while ago. We're going to show Louis Gohmert too. Do we have his ready to go?
I think Asher has it on his system. We just need him to send me a link if he can.
Allow me to screen share this.
He wants to screen share it with you.
Yeah, we can't do that, Asher. Just send me the link.
All right, try to find the link as we're doing this. And let's play our client, Siaka Massaquoi, in terms of January 6th. Here's someone, a black actor, a conservative activist in Hollywood, who's trying to earn a living, who was at the Capitol on January 6th. He was peaceful. He didn't hurt anybody. That Capitol belongs to we the people, the American people. And, someone obviously, ratted him out because they're twisting arms right now to get everybody they can. They've arrested more than 700 people. They've indicted hundreds. They're throwing them in prison. That is the Gestapo Justice Department without bail. They're denying them medical care. And let me add this too. I write about this in my book. A judge who I once had a great deal of respect for, Royce Lamberth, who Merrick Garland made reference to, and we're going to play his opening statement. Lamberth, never goes the distance. It's for show and not for dough, generally. And that was true even when I ran Judicial Watch. He could have put the Clintons away. He never did. And of course, they came back like the Rocky Horror Picture Show, and they're still out there. And, right now, you've got a situation where Lamberth just last week held prison officials in DC in civil contempt. Civil contempt, excuse the French again, I'm sorry to use four-letter words, but they're appropriate, doesn't mean shit, okay? Doesn't hold them accountable to anything. Should have been criminal contempt because they withheld medical care in a very seriously ill protester who was held in prison without bail. And then what does Lambert do? Typical show and not for dough. He sends the matter over to the Justice Department, the same Gestapo that created the situation for, quote, civil rights investigation. Garland refers to this and says, oh, I have great respect for Judge Lambert. Of course, because Judge Lambert's committing oral sex on Garland right now, for lack of a better word. And, you know, the only thing, I'm using this vulgarity because I want to make a point, okay? And that's how angry I am, because we don't have federal judges that'll stand up for the American people. And that's part of the whole plan in declaring a new government and electing them, not having them put on there with political campaign contributions and other forms of bribery. I'm sorry. That's what it is. Lawyer 45 years is telling you straight up. And I felt that way when I started Judicial Watch back in 1994, but it's gotten worse. So here's where we are. Let's play Siaka Massaquoi and explain what happened to him. Busted into his house at 5:45 a.m., had his best friend there with their kids. Best friend wasn't in Washington, had nothing to do with anything. FBI with about 20 agents handcuffed him in front of the kids, terrorized the kids. He says, I want to talk to a lawyer. He's not allowed to talk to a lawyer. He gets interrogated, and then they confiscate his property, and we enter the scene to try to get a property back. And we're told by an arrogant, corrupt U.S. attorney in Washington, D.C., who's handling this thing, we'll give it back to you when we feel like it. You know, we've now filed a small claims action to try to get it back. We'll see what that judge does. Don't hold your breath. But this is what we're dealing with, and it's why we need citizens' grand juries and to enforce the law ourselves, and also to declare independence yet again and move on peacefully and legally. Let's play this video of my brave client, Siaka Massaquoi. Good afternoon. My name is Larry Klayman. I'm the chairman and general counsel of Freedom Watch. Standing next to me is my client, Siaka Massaquoi. Today, Mr. Massaquoi filed a complaint in the U.S. District Court for the Central District of California against FBI Director Christopher Wray, against various FBI agents that raided his home, and against the Department of Justice generally. We also named unnamed agents because there were about 20 who raided his home. He doesn't have a name except for one. You can find the complaint that was filed at freedomwatchusa.org. And the reason that Mr. Massaquoi filed this complaint, it's a class action complaint. He did it not just for himself, but for all of those people, Americans, citizens, patriots who were in Washington, D.C. on January 6th to be there peacefully, to simply protest, not just with regard to what happened in the election and the fact that President Trump really couldn't even get a hearing, a real hearing, from even his own Supreme Court justices that threw him under the bus, but the fact that there was so much corruption in government that's built up over the years. It was a groundswell, and this was the way they let it out. They let it out. 99.9%, maybe slightly less, were there peacefully. There were some bad people on both sides, but most people were good people. And of course, the establishment in Washington, fearful that they were the reasons for January 6th, are striking back. They're striking back, and this establishment now is in control of alleged President Biden and alleged President Kamala Harris. And I say that because no one's ever gotten to the bottom of what happened in this election. And they're using the Justice Department, my once proud alma mater. I was a trial attorney and prosecutor for the antitrust division. I helped break up AT&T when I was a young lawyer. They're using it as, in effect, their own private Gestapo to go out there, to break into people's houses, to cuff them, to threaten them, to arrest them, to indict them, to have judges who were very favorably disposed to them because they're part of the establishment too, keep these people in prison as they await trial. Some are thrown into solitary confinement. And some of these judges are even saying that they're not getting out on bail, these protesters, peaceful protesters, because President Trump is still out there propagating the big lie. Well, that's not the function of a federal judge. And as Jefferson said, because federal judges and Supreme Court justices are unelected, it's against Article 3 of the Constitution, and appointed basically through campaign contributions given by special interests, which are otherwise bribes, frankly. You would not get the best and the brightest on the bench. You would get those who were compromised and ultimately corrupt. And Jefferson said that because of that, ultimately, the American people would rise up every 20 years or so and shed the blood of patriots and tyrants yet again, adding what's a few thousand dead to refresh the tree of liberty. Jefferson did not want to see anybody dead or hurt, nor do I, nor does Mr. Massaquoi. We're peaceful. But this is what's going to happen unless our federal judiciary steps in to protect the American people. And we won't be part of it, but that's going to be a natural consequence. We're just a few days removed from the storming of the Bastille on July 14th in 1789 in France, the beginning of the French Revolution. Jefferson was an architect of the French Revolution as well as the American Revolution, so he understands what can happen. So what Mr. Massaquoi did today, by using peaceful and legal recourse, suing the director of the FBI, the agents that commit this illegal raid, the FBI itself in the United States, to get redress for his grievances, for having his constitutional rights violated, for having his First Amendment rights trashed, his Fourth Amendment rights to be free of an unreasonable search and seizure trashed, to be denied right of counsel. And I'll explain to you that when the FBI came in, he asked to talk to a lawyer, and they said, you don't need any lawyer, and they interrogated him anyway, cuffed him and took him outside and treated him like a dog. That the American people need to rise up. And that's why we filed it as a class action. And once this case is certified, I hope there'll be thousands of Americans that join this class action that were affected, that were in Washington peacefully that day. We are seeking to use legal means to seek redress for our grievances. And we pray that we will get a judge that has the courage to let this case go forward so we get to the bottom of it. Director Wray is primarily responsible for this. He's obviously been directing it. He is on the defense because Congress and the rest of the establishment hacks in Washington, on both sides of the political aisle, I might add, Democrat and Republican, have accused him of not giving them warning for January 6th. And as a result, and not doing anything during January 6th, even with regard to some of the more people who didn't act appropriately, is that he's gone on offense, and now he accuses everybody virtually in Washington of being a white domestic terrorist with racial motivations, and we must round them all up, indict them, and throw them in prison. Well, you know, that's not the role of an FBI director. He's supposed to represent us, the American people, not the special interests and those who are in charge in Washington. And Biden and Harris now are simply the rubber stamps. They're the stooges of the violent left. Nothing's happened to Antifa. Nothing's happened to those who destroyed courthouses, destroyed property, and harmed businesses throughout the last few years. But yet, it's conservatives who are in Washington, people of faith, and those who believe in the vision of our founding fathers, who are getting the full force of the FBI, which is now being used as a modern-day Gestapo. This is frightening for the American people, and frankly, it's why Mr. Massaquoi is so brave to come forward, because there are many Americans out there that just simply want to watch Sean Hannity and listen to at the end of the show, and the Democrats say we're going to throw Granny over the cliff, be entertained, smoke whatever they're smoking, and or drinking wine and eating popcorn, and that's enough. It's not enough. The American people need to rise up, or we will have no country. It's already about 90% gone, and now's the time to join Freedom Watch at freedomwatchusa.org. Join our citizens' grand juries. You can go there and read about it. Join our Third Continental Congress, where we're seeking to bring together learned people, as we did on July 5th and 6th, to decide how we save the nation. The Father and the Son only help us if we help ourselves. Our founding fathers, in the Declaration of Independence, where it said, when in the course of human events, the sovereign, the rulers, no longer represent the people, they have a right under the laws of nature and nature's God to abolish or alter that government and to form a new government by and for the people with equal rights for everyone in pursuit of life, liberty, and happiness. That's a paraphrase of what Jefferson and the others wrote. They invoke divine providence, that is God, and the Without the divine providence, we would not have a nation. So we, the American people, must get down on our knees and pray and help ourselves, because God will not help us if we do not help ourselves.
It's well said, Larry. I've got the clip. Merrick Garland is actually testifying right now, live. Would you like to see a bit of that?
Yeah, sure, if it's on this particular issue, but...
It is.
Okay, good.
This is Merrick Garland testifying before the House Committee on Justice Oversight. Let's see what they're talking about right now.
The gentleman has not made a valid point of order.
Now we recognize that.
The gentleman...
Move the table. Move the table.
There's nothing to appeal. There's been no ruling. There's been no ruling.
There's just been an objection.
There's just been an objection, and the objection has been heard.
So now we'll introduce the Attorney General.
Now we'll introduce the Attorney General. I will now introduce today's witness. Merrick Garland was sworn in as the 86th Attorney General of the United States on March 11th, 2021. Immediately preceding his confirmation as Attorney General, Mr. Garland was a judge of the United States Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia Circuit. He was appointed to that position in 1997, served as Chief Judge of the Circuit from 2013 to 2020, and served as Chair of the Executive Committee of the Judicial Conference of the United States from 2017 until 2020. In 2016, President Obama nominated him for the position of Associate Justice of the United States Supreme Court. Before becoming a federal judge, Attorney General Garland spent a substantial part of his professional life at the Department of Justice, including as Special Assistant to the Attorney General, Assistant United States Attorney, Deputy Assistant Attorney General in the Criminal Division, and Principal Associate Deputy Attorney General. Earlier in his career, Attorney General Garland was in private practice, and he also taught at Harvard Law School. He earned both his undergraduate and law degrees from Harvard University. Following law school, he clerked for Judge Henry Friendly of the United States Court of Appeals for the Second Circuit and for Supreme Court Justice William Brennan. We welcome the Attorney General, and we thank him for participating today. Now, if you'd please rise, I will begin by swearing you in.
Bianca's part and tell him to play that too.
Raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm, or under penalty of perjury, that the testimony you're about to give is true and correct, to the best of your knowledge, information, and belief, so help you God? Let the record show that the witness has answered in the affirmative. Thank you, and please be seated. Please note that your written statement will be entered into the record in its entirety. Accordingly, I ask that you summarize your testimony in 5 minutes. To help you stay within that time limit, there's a timing light on your table.
I
when
think
the light switches from
we're
green
sort
to
of in
yellow,
the middle here, Larry. They got a lot of stuff that they're going to be talking about.
You're not in the middle. I watched this earlier, so just let it roll.
Attorney
Keep it
General
playing.
Garland, you may begin.
It's only 5
Chairman
minutes.
Nadler, Ranking Member Gordon, distinguished members of this committee, thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today. In my address to all Justice Department employees on my first day in office, I spoke about 3 co-equal priorities that should guide the department's work: upholding the rule of law, keeping our country safe, and protecting civil rights. The first core priority, upholding the rule of law, is rooted in the recognition that to succeed and retain the trust of the American people, the Justice Department must adhere to the norms that have been part of its DNA since Edward Levy's tenure as the first post-Watergate Attorney General. Those norms of independence from improper influence, of the principled exercise of discretion, and of treating like cases alike define who we are as public servants. Over the past 7 months that I have served as Attorney General, the Department has reaffirmed and, where appropriate, updated and strengthened policies that are foundational for these norms. For example, we strengthened our policy governing communications between the Justice Department and the White House. That policy is designed to protect the Department's criminal and civil law enforcement decisions and its legal judgments from partisan or other inappropriate influence. We also issued a policy to better protect the freedom and independence of the press by restricting the use of compulsory process to obtain information from or records of members of the news media. The second priority is keeping our country safe from all threats, foreign and domestic, while also protecting our civil liberties. We are strengthening our 200 joint terrorism task forces which are the essential hubs for international and domestic counterterrorism cooperation across all levels of government. For FY22, we are seeking more than $1.5 billion, a 12% increase for our counterterrorism work. We are also taking aggressive steps to counter cyber threats, whether from nation-states, terrorists, or common criminals. In April, we launched both a comprehensive cyber review and a ransomware and digital extortion task force. In June, we seized a $2.3 million ransom payment made in Bitcoin to the group that targeted Colonial Pipeline. Keeping our country safe also requires reducing violent crime and gun violence. In May, we announced a comprehensive violent crime strategy which deploys all of our relevant departmental components to those ends. We also launched 5 cross-jurisdictional strike forces to disrupt illegal firearms trafficking in key corridors across the country, and to support local police departments and help them build trust with the communities they serve. Our FY22 budget requests over $1 billion for grants. We are likewise committed to keeping our country safe from violent drug trafficking networks that are, among other things, fueling the overdose epidemic. Opioids, including illegal fentanyl, caused nearly 70,000 fatal overdose deaths in 2020. We will continue to use all resources at our disposal to save lives. Finally, keeping our country safe requires protecting its democratic institutions, including the one we sit in today, from violent attack. As the committee is well aware, the department is engaged in one of the most sweeping investigations in its history in connection with the January 6th attack on the Capitol. The department's third core priority is protecting civil rights. This was a founding purpose when the Justice Department was established in 1870. Today, the Civil Rights Division's work remains vital to safeguarding voting rights, prosecuting hate crimes, ensuring constitutional policing, and stopping unlawful discrimination. This year, we doubled the size of the Civil Rights Division's voting section, and our FY22 budget seeks the largest ever increase for the division, totaling more than 15%. We have appointed department-wide coordinators for our hate crimes work, and we have stepped up our support for the Community Relations Service and the department-wide efforts to advance environmental justice and tackle climate change. We are also revitalizing and expanding our work to ensure equal access to justice. In the days ahead, we look forward to working with Congress to restore a standalone access to justice office within the department dedicated to addressing the most urgent legal needs of communities across America. In addition to these core priorities, another important area of departmental focus is ensuring antitrust enforcement, reinvigorating that enforcement, combating fraud, and protecting consumers. We are aggressively enforcing our antitrust laws by challenging anti-competitive mergers and exclusionary conduct, and by prosecuting price fixing and allocation schemes that harm both consumers and workers. In FY22, we are seeking additional resources to reinvigorate antitrust enforcement across the board. We also stood up the COVID-19 Fraud Enforcement Task Force to bring to justice those who defrauded the government of federal dollars meant for the most vulnerable among us. In sum, in 7 months, the Justice Department has accomplished a lot of important work for the American people, and there is much more to be done. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today, and I look forward to your questions.
Jason, let me make
this guy's
a comment
living in a
here.
dream
Yeah.
world.
Well, no, actually, here's the dream world. $1.5 billion more to combat terrorism, anti-terrorism task force. Who are those terrorists? White domestic terrorists, okay? You know, you can see what went on in Afghanistan, the statements of the administration, we've got over the horizon capabilities, and they wind up killing 7 young kids, innocent kids. It's to use against us, 1.5 billion. Then he says, one of the most sweeping investigations in Justice Department and FBI history is against the peaceful protesters of January 6th. He's bragging about that. He's bragging about that because he knows that also suits most of the Republican Party as well, who fear for their own necks, okay, in terms of the way the people perceive them right now. Then he talks about boosting the Civil Rights Division. Well, yeah, it's to use against white people. Okay, there's no equal justice anymore. If you're black or a minority or whatever, you can do almost anything you want. You can steal up to $950 in the city of Los Angeles and in California in general and just walk off. Next,
unless
voting.
you're conservative, black or white, conservatives are being prosecuted, as is the case with Siaka Mossakoy.
Next, voting. Okay, obviously that's to cook the voting system. So no conservative, libertarian person of faith or anyone who believes in the vision and creation of our founding fathers will ever be elected president again, much less congressman or senator. You got to look through what it is he's saying, and he's playing to the crowd of leftists, of which he represents. So yes, now let's, if we can, Jason, because my assistant sent it to you, play Louis Gohmert's response to that, which is actually accurate. But again, Louis doesn't do anything.
We haven't been able to actually transmit the link to where that Louis Gohmert response is.
Asher says that he has sent it to you. Take a look. We can take some time. In the meantime, while you do that, maybe let's play Siaka Mossakoy's statement after my statement when we gave the press conference.
Sure, we've got that ready.
Okay. Mr. Mossakoy.
Thank you, Larry. First, I'd like to thank Larry Klayman, Freedom Watch, for taking this case and helping me out tremendously so that we are able to file against the United States. Director Christopher Wray, the FBI, and Special Agent Chad Warren, amongst others, who were one of 20, that came into my home June 10th at 5:45 in the morning, where they cuffed up my best friend in front of his two children, 3 and 7. They cuffed my 2 other roommates. And then when they finally came to me, they cuffed me with nothing but sweatpants on, took me outside like I was a common criminal. The only thing that I've ever been guilty of is drinking and driving, which I had to deal with on my own. That's the only thing. Every time I've been walking around here and going to any of these rallies since last June, we've been here, which I think is really apropos. We're here in Beverly Hills. When we first started seeing our First Amendment get taken away, all we did was peacefully protest. And the first thing they did was they started with the parking, to block us from parking around here. They covered up the signs. Then they had their guys come here and try to give people citations for not wearing masks. Let's fast forward now to having these guys come into my home, arrest or cuff everyone up. I asked initially, where's the warrant? I need to talk to a lawyer. Multiple times. This is not what this is. Hold on a second. We'll get you a copy. Does that sound like it's right to anyone out there? But that's what happened to me and those in my house. When asked repeatedly, this is not a communist country as far as I know, and as far as most of us conservatives are fighting for. This is not a communist country, but yet this is how they treated me, and this is how they treated many others. After about 5 hours of interrogation, because what do you call it when they have guns out? Searching, photos of everything in my home. They took my computers, they took my cell phones, they took my hard drives. They also took my notebooks I used that was very personal to me in my recovery. Just took 2 MAGA hats as well. And everything that they took, including the MAGA hats, but everything else that they took. In a world right now, after lockdowns in 2020, that we've created a world where we make our livings off our phones and our computers. They took that. And when asked why, and asked if we can get it back, they said, because I wasn't charged, I don't have the right to discovery. I want everyone to understand that. Because I wasn't charged, I don't get a right to know why they came into my house at 5:45 in the morning with guns drawn, as if I was running guns, trafficking children. Nothing. That's what they're willing to do to anybody right now we see that speaks out. The current president of the United States is telling people this is what we're going to do. He's telling people to tell on your friends and your family members. This is what the current president of the United States is doing. He's telling people, if you stand up to us, you better have a nuke because you don't have a chance. That's the country that they're turning into. So we feel like we had to take a stand. I am so honored. Feel so blessed to have Larry reach out, Larry and Asher reach out in order to help us and help me set this up so that we can all now be the voice for everyone else. Maybe this is where I was supposed to be. And as part of this, if you feel fear out there, don't be. I'll take the hits. If this has happened to you, reach out. We know 72-year-old men, former vet, cuffed, ankles, waist, wrist in front of his grandchildren. For what? Nothing. We see guys who were they were there as reporters, but because they were conservatives, they've got searched. All their camera equipment, all their hard drive gone. How is he going to make his living since March? That's what we're seeing. But there's nothing happening to those that burn down communities all across this country. Not one thing that we've seen right now. But peaceful protesters, truly peaceful protesters. They came in and stole my property. They didn't give me any type of ability to contact counsel or anything like that. They produced to me a page for the warrant, not a document that we filled out here. They introduced one page to have AKs, everything, guns drawn, cuffed up, embarrassing my community. One page is all they felt like they needed to bring. If this is the country we want, we're going down a dark path. There is only one way this ends. I'm deciding, with Larry's help, with Asher's help, and with everyone else out there, and especially if something's happened to you, please reach out. Let's do this. Let's take this country back. Let's stand up. It's for the people, by the people, but the people have to step up. Again, God bless you, and God bless the United States of America.
We are trying to do it peacefully and legally using the tools that we have in our legal system. And that's why we pray that we get a judge who allows this case to go forward. Even the President of the United States, Donald Trump, I still consider him to be the President of the United States, did not get due process. We want due process.
Wonderfully powerful words there, Larry, from Siaka Massaquoi.
Yeah, let me give you the follow-up here, okay, because this is important.
Yeah.
And this is in the updated version of my book, and it hasn't played out yet, is that after the complaint was filed, a magistrate judge, okay, which are just like the federal judges, they're like the vassals, they're like the serfs of the federal judges. Magistrate Judge Donahue, a Democrat leftist female judge, magistrate judge in the Central District of California, before we even served the complaint, dismissed the complaint on the phony grounds without prejudice. Okay, we can refile, but she wasn't going to let it go forward. And she wrote a like 15-page single-spaced opinion, which is totally wrong. Because when I was at Judicial Watch, which I founded, of course, on July 29th, 1994, I represented a client, Notre Trulock, who had uncovered negligence, gross negligence at the FBI with regard to a Chinese scientist by the name of Wenho Lee, who worked at the Los Alamos National Laboratory, who had misappropriated our nuclear codes for our nuclear weapons. And Notre wanted to write a book about that when the FBI wouldn't do anything. Louis Freeh was the FBI director, and Louis Freeh directed his agents to break into Notre's house to take his computers, just like they did with Siaka. They even sent back agents and gun-butted his dog when he wasn't there. He found his dog lying on the ground, bleeding, as a warning that he better not spill the beans about the FBI's lack of concern about Wenho Lee. I later deposed Wenho Lee, but we won't get into that on this case. We brought a lawsuit for Notre Trulock. Anyway, that lawsuit was against Louis Freeh and the FBI, just like we brought this case against Christopher Wray of the FBI and the FBI agents in the FBI. And it was dismissed at the lower court level in the Eastern District of Virginia. It went up to the Fourth Circuit, which is a fairly prestigious quote unquote circuit. It was at the time. They've been now corrupted too. But they ruled that our case could go forward. And it did go forward. I then left to run for the US Senate. I don't know what Fitton and the boys did over at Judicial Watch, but it ultimately didn't go anywhere. In any event, and there's Fourth Circuit precedent that this was a viable case in terms of infringing the right, First Amendment rights to free speech, which is what Siaka was doing on Capitol Hill. And yet this magistrate, despite that precedent from a then prestigious Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals, that's in Richmond, Virginia, dismissed it without or even having a chance to respond. She, by the way, was a career lawyer in the Justice Department, U.S. Attorney's Office in Los Angeles, California, in the Central District. This is what we're dealing with. And this is why we need honest judges, elected and not appointed. This political hack, Democrat, leftist, female judge, who may not have liked Siaka for that, given that he was male as well, who knows? In today's world, everybody hates everybody else because they've been whipping it up. She wouldn't let it go forward. Now, we're going to refile it, and we're going to refile it in a way that she doesn't get it again, and we'll see what happens. But the judge that sat over this case, is my recollection, that was assigned, was a Trump-appointed judge, and he didn't step in. So this is what we're dealing with, and I write about it in my book, It Takes a Revolution, and also the rewrite. And it's why these citizens' grand juries are so important. It's why, again, excuse the French, the bullshit, M-E-R-D-E in French, that we hear from Jim Jordan and the rest. It's just that. Why aren't they doing what Larry Klayman is attempting to do at Freedom Watch? Why are they just cavorting around, pontificating, going on Hannity, raising money, looking for accolades that they're the greatest thing since sliced bread, when they can do exactly what Freedom Watch is doing, and do it as a congressman as well? Anyway, I don't know if you had a chance to find.
I've got the clip here, Larry. I think
let's play Gomer.
Part of the problem is it's going on live right now, so let's come in and see what we can
I
get.
see no sign that it's going to be reversed.
We were here in the Judiciary Committee pursuing testimony from Mr. McGahn, and the court being labeled a domestic institutions and preserve and protect our democratic republic. With that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
The gentlelady yields back. Mr. Gomert.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Judge Garland, for being here. You stated a moment ago you couldn't imagine a parent being labeled a domestic terrorist, but parents all over the country believe that's exactly what you labeled them by your memo indicating you were going to get involved in board meetings, school board meetings, because of the threat of domestic terrorism. So if you can't imagine a parent being labeled a domestic terrorist, I would encourage you to redo your memo so it's not so perceived as being so threatening to people concerned about their kids' education. But I want to take you to January 6th. It's a very common topic here for people. Has any defendant involved in the January 6 events been charged with insurrection?
I don't believe so.
Well, that is the word most used by Democrats here on Capitol Hill about January 6, but no one has been charged with it that we could find either. How many protesters on January 6 were charged with obstructing an official proceeding for 4 to 6 hours? Do you know?
I don't know the exact number. Obviously, there were 650 who were arrested, some for assaulting officers, some for obstructing proceedings, some for conspiring to obstruct proceedings. I can get you the numbers for each of the specific.
Well, thank you. I'd be interested in getting that number. But regarding the men who broke the glass in the two doors there at the speaker's lobby, when the two Capitol Police had been standing there, moved to the side to allow them access, were any of those people who broke glass and did damage to those doors working for the FBI or other federal law enforcement entities?
This is an ongoing criminal investigation, and I'm really not at liberty to discuss. There have been some filings in a nature of discovery, which has been provided to the defendants. But other than that, I can't discuss this now.
Well, we've seen some of those filings that talk about persons 1 through 20-something. Were those persons 1 designated by number, were those people that were employed by the FBI or federal entities, or were they confidential informants?
Again, I don't know those specifics, but I do not believe that any of the people you're mentioning charged in the indictment were either one.
Was a determination ever made as to who repeatedly struck Roseanne Boylan in the head with a rod before she died?
Again, I think this was a matter that was investigated by the U.S. Attorney's Office. And
well, there's a witness on video saying that it was a D.C. Metro policeman. I didn't know if you'd been able to confirm or deny that. Well, on June 22nd of 2016, Judge, most of the Democrat members of Congress took over the House floor, and for the first time in American history, members of Congress obstructed official proceedings, not for 4 to 6 hours, but for virtually 26 hours, not just violating over a dozen House rules, but actually committing the felony that some of the January 6 people are charged with. That was during the Obama administration. Nobody has been charged. And those kind of things where you let Democrat members of Congress off for the very thing that you're viciously going after people that were protesting on January 6th gives people the indication that there is a two-tiered justice system here in America. You know well, you've been a circuit court judge, you know well that confinement, pretrial confinement, is not ever to be used as punishment. Yet there are people, and understand, as a former tough law and order judge, I would sentence everyone, regardless of their party, committed crimes on January 6th to appropriate sentences. But for heaven's sake, they are being abused in the D.C. jail. Have you done an inspection over there of the D.C. jail since your department has some jurisdiction?
so my understanding is Judge Lamberth, who I respect very much, has...
Yeah, he held the warden in contempt, but we haven't seen improvement.
He asked for a review, and the Justice Department is conducting a review. The marshals did an inspection the other day, which was reported in the news, and the Civil Rights Division is examining the circumstances. This is the District of Columbia Jail. It's not a Bureau of Prisons, you understand.
Time of the gentleman has expired. As I've explained to members on many occasions, I view the wearing of face masks as a safety issue, and therefore as an important matter of order and decorum. Because I am responsible for preserving order and decorum in this committee, I am requiring members and staff attending this hearing to wear face masks. I came to this decision after the Office of the Attending Physician released its guidance requiring masks in committee hearings some time ago. I note that some members are still not wearing masks.
Larry, I'm gonna stop Nadler right here because, you know, it's just disgusting to me. One of the number one comorbidities for COVID-19 and a litany of other diseases is obesity, which Gerald Nadler is guilty of.
He's felt the way he used to be. He used to get 2 airline tickets, 2 seats, because he couldn't fit in one. But
I fundamentally object to a person like this insisting on any kind of health protocol. And if people say that I'm fat shaming him, well, again, when somebody gets involved in trying to tell me and other people what they need to do to protect their health and show such a lack of concern for their own health, that's a completely invalid set of circumstances. But what do we think about Merrick Garland there?
It shows that it's a clown show. And, you know, as far as what Garland said, and listen to what Gohmert said. Gohmert's solution to the threats against parents with regard to school board meetings, them protesting, was for Garland to revise his memo. That's going to assure parents that they're not going to be persecuted like the January 6th defendants. Revise the memo. Then Garland says he really has no knowledge about the total number of people that were arrested. I mean, what does he do in his office? I don't know. Is he doing coloring books like the president? I mean, it's unbelievable. He looks like he's almost as mentally infirm as Biden. And he's not at liberty to discuss what went on. That's a convenient excuse in Washington, D.C. I'm not at liberty to discuss. Let's not answer a question from someone who has the authority to answer it. And then disingenuously, he praises Royce Lamberth. Okay, he's not the friend of Royce Lamberth. He's not the friend of me or of you or the American people, but he's hiding behind a Republican appointed judge by Reagan. And again, what is Lamberth's response to this? He sends it over to Garland to investigate, the guy who was perpetrating the crimes against the American people along with Christopher Wray. I'm going to send this video to Lamberth. I want him to watch it. I still consider him to be my friend, but he's not doing the right thing. And I send him things from time to time because I don't have a case in front of him right now. And I suspect that the little that he did with regard to the peaceful protester the other day with the civil contempt, which means nothing, and the referral to the Justice Department, which is even worse, may have been prodded by things that I said to him, because I told him, you're the one judge on the bench who has any degree of integrity. Step up, save the American people. Do your little part to do that. Don't play the game. You played the game for too many years, for show and not for dough. You had the power to put the Clintons away. You had the power to do X, Y, Z. And you, like the rest of them, caved in. And lately, you've gone native. So, I'm being critical. He's been critical of me in opinions over the years. And we have the right to do the same thing as Americans. But Lamberth, what he did, didn't really protect the people in the prison. It was to make himself look good. And last but not least, let me make this point, Jason. Last but not least, we heard more bullshit, okay, from Gomer, okay? Well, not just Gomer, but Garland. He talks about congressmen obstructing proceedings during the Obama administration, okay? It was worse than what happened on January 6th, according to what people characterize January 6th as an insurrection. Well, when Trump became a president, he controlled the Justice Department. The statute of limitations did not run on what those congressmen had done. The Trump Justice Department could have brought prosecutions. So when Gobert lays it off on Garland, that's not sincere either. And the fact is, the Republican Party is nothing more than a corrupt racketeering enterprise that raises money for itself, that deceives the American people, that uses Fox News primarily to do that. And you've got a Democrat Party literally inhabited by the devil that has turned this case into a godless communist state in just 10 months. And that's why I'm so angry. And that's why I'm angry at the American people. There's the subtitle of my updated book, Wake Up America. It's called, It Takes a Counter-Revolution. It's now a counter-revolution, Wake Up America. The American people that are sitting there watching, that are in retirement, or that young and old, think they're going to do nothing here, are just as guilty of the destruction of this country as these radical leftists that have taken control.
Indeed. I don't think we have any other clips, Larry. Was there anything else you wanted to cover?
No, and I think that I have faith in the American people, and I have faith in God. And I want people to remember, in the days leading up to our first revolution, it was a small number of colonialists, which included our founding fathers, who used the printing press and pamphlets, people like Thomas Paine and others, to get them to understand that even though King George III had, and this is really all King George III did, he was Mother Teresa, he was a Boy Scout or Girl Scout compared to who's in control today. He simply wanted to overtax us to pay for the rest of his empire. Then when we rose up and we rebelled, he tried to take our guns away. He took our legal system away back to the Court of St. James. Our founding fathers recognized, and they convinced the colonies to declare independence. And it was the king who declared war on us. The same thing I'm saying we're going to do with independence yet again. We're not going to declare on war on them. If they want to declare war on us, let them do so. If they start it using our Second Amendment rights, we'll finish it. But this is what needs to be done in self-defense. We need to protect ourselves. And the American people need to risk all to rise up right now. If you care at all about your kids, your grandkids, and future generations, you just can't sit there watching Sean Hannity each night. I'm sorry. And this is what we need to impress on the American people. And that's why we're using citizens' grand juries. We're using Third Continental Congresses. We will declare independence. We'll pose a slate of people who can lead this country, people of the caliber of George Washington, of Thomas Jefferson, of Benjamin Franklin, of others, people who are unafraid. If Siaka Massaquoi can say, I'm unafraid, you know, this is what they did to me and I wasn't even charged. And the only reason they didn't charge him was because he was black, and he knows that. He's a bad example for them. You're not supposed to be black and conservative. You're not supposed to be Jewish and conservative. You're not supposed to be other things and conservative. Is that if he had been white, he would have been charged by now. But this is where we are today. And God forbid that he is charged, because if he does, everything I stand for will be used against the people that attempt to harm him or anybody else like him. But I'm angry. And you, the American people, need to be angry too, because when you see these people on both sides of the aisle playing these games with us, and I'm just going to ask you, Attorney General, to revise your memorandum about threatening children. And that's not even, it's threatening parents of children. That's not even talking about what they're doing with the IRS now to get into people's bank accounts to intimidate them. That's a technique of dictatorships throughout time. And I just want you to revise your memorandum. Then you know you have no Republican Party in opposition. And you better step up to the plate yourself, risk everything you have if you care one iota about your children and grandchildren. That's all I have to say. We'll be back next week, and we will seek the indictment of Garland and Wray, head of the Justice Department and its FBI, and we will seek to try them. We will seek to get convictions. We will seek to get sentences, and we will ask police and the military to carry it out, because they've had it as well. And now is the time before it's too late, before we have no ability, no freedom of movement, no freedom of speech, no freedom of association, to take our country back.
Yeah. And I want to remind viewers, Larry, that they can support the citizens' grand juries by going to freedomwatchusa.org and clicking on the donate tab. Make a choice for an economic contribution that fits your budget. People who contribute $50 or more are going to get a copy of Larry's book, and this is a tax-deductible contribution. Also want to remind people they can support Crowdsource the Truth and keep the independent broadcasts going by visiting subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth or patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth and becoming a sponsor. Huge library of sponsor-exclusive content there. And help us keep this information for the people, by the people, and of the people. No corporate sponsors here. You are the sponsor. You are part of the jury. And we are the people here who are going to set this right. Larry, thank you for everything that you're doing.
I want to say this to you, Jason. We thank you. You are a brave person. You yourself have experienced the tyranny by big tech and others. And we need more people like you. I thank you. Without Jason Goodman, we wouldn't be able to get this information out. Frankly, there are many people in the so-called conservative movement who are afraid of their shadow and will not step up to the plate now, or who write books simply telling us about American Marxism when we already know that. And then the solution is simply, let's boycott and protest. We need that, but we also need to wage a counter-revolution peacefully and legally.
Thank you, Larry, and thanks everyone for watching. Have a great day.